Let's talk a little bit about tournament formats. So we all know mostly how lots of these tournaments work. If you want to run a round robin tournament or a double round robin tournament or something like a professional regular season, it takes forever. There's a million games to be done. Um, it does give you the best generally idea of who overall is the best team, who is the worst team, how teams stack up all in the middle. So in some ways, it's the best format that there is, but it's a lot of games. So if you wanted to do something like run some kind of an open competition where people are allowed to show up, maybe it's going to be a 1 day or a 1 weekend type of deal, um, you're just not going to have time to do that sort of thing. So what else can you do? Well, obviously you could do a single elimination tournament or a knockout tournament. This is something that we're also all very familiar with. Everyone gets matched up, and if you lose, you're out, and you keep playing until there's only one team left. So that does work, but there's some problems with that too. If someone's going to be traveling some distance, you'd hate to see them just get knocked out after just one matchup. You'd like to give people a chance to give some decent participation. That sort of thing maybe works for the World Cup or for other high stakes professional sports. It works for the NCAA tournament. But again, if it's going to be some kind of an open competition that you want people to be able to come have fun, they're doing it mostly for fun. In that case, maybe single elimination isn't really the best option. So what else can you do? Well, you could do a Swiss style tournament. This is done very commonly in chess tournaments or card games like Magic the Gathering. In this tournament, everyone gets to play in every round. And then the matchups for one round are based on how everyone's done so far. So whoever has won in the previous rounds, if you've won about the same amount of times, you get matched up against someone who's done about as well as you have so far. This works pretty well, and that's why it's used for these situations. So what are some problems with that? Well, imagine you have 8 people in a tournament and you decide you're going to play a 3-round Swiss, and this sort of thing is very common in Magic the Gathering. Well, you basically just have a single elimination tournament. The only difference is that the players who are eliminated are allowed to keep playing, but they're not in contention for winning this anymore. So that can be fun. They can have some enjoyment from it, but it's not necessarily the best idea to say that, oh, you don't have any chance to win anymore, but you're going to keep playing anyway. An easy solution to that would be to maybe extend it so that instead of playing only 3 rounds with 8 players, maybe you play 4 or 5 rounds with 8 players. Of course, then you're playing a longer tournament, and maybe that doesn't work as well either. So that's the Swiss tournament. Another big problem with that is that you have to wait till one round is complete before you can start the next round at all. So if my game goes very quickly, I'm going to be having to sit there and wait until every single game for that round is done before we can move forward. So there can be a lot of sitting around and waiting. So another option then would be the double elimination tournament. And this is one I actually like quite a lot. Here, you play until you lose twice. Now, what are some problems with that? Well, I'll get into that in a minute when I start showing brackets. But typically, there's a lot more matches in the loser's bracket than in the winner's bracket, so you can have people still waiting around. But because there's a bracket, as soon as it's known who my opponent is, we can go ahead and start our match. Again, I'm imagining we're playing a card game where there's plenty of tables, not something like basketball where we have to have a court available. This may not be as relevant for something like that. But if we have plenty of table space, then as soon as it's known who my opponent is, we can go ahead and start our game. And that can really help keep the things moving along. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start showing some brackets and giving some commentary. First, this is the simplest double elimination bracket that you can imagine. We have 2 teams. They play each other. The loser drops to here, and the winner goes to here. And also of note, the winner goes to here as well. So guess what? They're going to play each other again. If the team that wins game 1 also wins game 2, well, then they're in both this slot and this slot. Game 3 becomes not necessary. They are simply the winner. If this team, the team that loses game 1, wins game 2, well, now we have one final matchup here. And of course, this is just a simple best of 3 series. Double elimination with 2 teams is the same thing as a best of 3 series. All right, so now let's take a look at how double elimination traditionally works with 4 teams. All right, in this case, we have 2 teams here and 2 teams here. They each play each other. You've got this winner's bracket, right? So this looks exactly like a 4-team single elimination bracket. This portion of it here does. But whenever a team loses from here, they drop on down to the loser's bracket. So in this round, you have the losers play each other, and in the loser of this game here plays here as well. Again, the winner of this game advances both to Game 6 and to Game 7. So it's possible that Game 7 will not be necessary. That's always going to be the case with double elimination. But I think it's also important to note that, hey, this winner of Game 3, they're going to have a bye in this round here. Even though we have a nice power of 2, exactly 4 people in the tournament, there's still a bye gets introduced. They're going to have to sit and wait while Game 5 gets played before they can move on. And this always happens in double elimination. And if you go to more teams in double elimination, like if I move to the 8-team double elimination, you see it gets even worse. Now you have byes here and here. And indeed, the teams coming out of the winner's bracket disproportionately get more byes. You could look at that as a good thing. Hey, they've been winning. They earn their byes. Good for them. Or, if you're playing for fun, sometimes sitting around for a bye isn't all that fun. I've definitely had it where I've gone to go play a card game and I just draw a bye because, say, there's an odd number of people. I don't like that. Yes, I get credited for a win in that situation, but I don't like that. I don't really care about winning. I want to play. So minimizing byes, I think, can be an important thing for certain formats. All right, here I'm going to propose something a little bit weird. This is a different way that one could run a double elimination tournament with 4 players. I've got it called crossover, and you can see why, because we don't have a separate winners and losers bracket here. We actually do have the winners bracket, but I've got it broken up in a funny way so that it's hard to see here. It starts here and then kind of goes up here. But anyways, what you see here is that first, again, as always, the 4 teams play each other in 2 games. But in the second round, instead of moving on with a winner's bracket and a loser's bracket, what we do is we cross them over. The winners play against the losers, right? And again, as is important to note, the team that advances from this game here, they go to here and to here, which makes it double elimination. And it is possible that a team could be advancing both here and here, so as always, Game 7 may or may not be necessary. So anyways, we have winners playing against losers in the second round. Now, Games 5 and 6, I've got them offset on this chart here, because they may involve the same team, right? A team could advance, the winner of round 1 could advance here and then advance here, but also play here. So these may in fact be in different rounds. So how many rounds do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Game 7 may not be necessary, so it's 4 or 5, right? Even if these happen to be all different teams and they can run together, if that were the case, then you'd have 1, 2, 3, and in that case, Game 7 will always end up being necessary, so 4. So this is 4 or 5 rounds to complete this for double elimination, which is the same as a standard, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 or 5 rounds, right? But when we take this and expand it to more players, you'll see that doing these crossovers actually does start to save some rounds, which will be neat. All right, what do you do if you have only 3? Well, this is just a simple standard double elimination in which I've knocked out one of the teams. You can see you've got some byes here. You got 3 teams, you got an odd number of teams, of course, you're going to have byes. You can't do much about that. There's a couple of ways you could do this. Here I've got it where obviously the team that gets the bye plays against the winner, and then I'm saying, okay, then the losing teams play against each other to knock somebody out. You could also, instead of bringing the losers down, you could have the winner play. So you could have the winner of Game 2 playing against the other team that's left, instead of it being the loser of Game 2 playing against the other team that's left. You could do it that way. Usually we like to do it this way so that you get the reward for winning by being a little bit more advanced here. So this is done again out of the standard double elimination. You could do this out of a crossover double elimination. I tried to put that together a little bit. It actually looks really weird and kind of ridiculous. So for 3 teams in double elimination, I think this is kind of the way to do it. All right, now let's start talking about a few formats with some more teams, right? Here, this is, everybody has seen this. This is just simply 8 teams, single elimination. If you're going to do single elimination, it's basically going to go like this. 1, 8. Here you're going to have 2 and 7. And then we're going to have 3 and 6. And then here we're going to have 4 and 5, right? That's how you would seed it if you're going to seed it. Seeding is not always a good option. Sometimes you just simply do a random draw. All right. Again, I showed this earlier. If you're going to do a standard double elimination, this is what you're going to do. Notice how many more rounds there are in the loser's bracket than in the winner's bracket. That means that if you win, you're going to be rewarded by sitting around for a while. I'm not a huge fan of that. So, moving on. So here we have, as I was saying, the standard 8-player double elimination. So I want to go now into what you do with 6 players. You take kind of the 8 players as a basis for that to move on into 6. Now, this is the normal way that you see 6-player single elimination tournaments set up. I personally think this is a terrible way to do it. It makes sense if you have a well-seeded tournament, but if it's a random draw, then I don't think it makes any sense at all to do it this way. And the reason is because, hey, you've got 6 players, you've got an even number of players right here, and you're going to start off by giving 2 of them buys, right? That makes no sense at all to me. Why not have them play each other, right? So because of that, here's what I recommend for a 6-player single elimination, right? Very simple. You just play right away. Of course, there's a bye. It can't be avoided, but it comes a little bit later. And in the lucky event that it happens that this game takes a little while compared to these, you may not have to wait for quite as long, right? And in any case, it's only 1 team that's waiting, not 2. So this is what I recommend if you're not seeding for a 6-player single elimination. All right, double elimination for 6 players. Again, this is the way that you would normally see it done. Same thing, you've got 2 players with buys right off the bat, just like you had in single elimination. And then just like as happens with single elimination, or with double elimination 8 players, you have these buys that creep in as the loser's bracket piles up games compared to the winner's bracket. And of course, these buys end up corresponding to some more buys further down the bracket. So we have 6 players, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 buys that are going to come up during the course of this. I think that's pretty bad, actually. So, basing off of this same kind of adjustment to the single elimination, here's the corresponding double elimination. And we notice we've gone from 7 buys down to 1, 2, 3 buys. That, I think, is a huge improvement. Okay. Now, you'll notice I've crept in another innovation here that I haven't discussed yet. And what I've done here is that I have dropped the idea that we must have a winner's bracket winner and then a loser's bracket winner to get to your final, right? We're bringing these together much sooner. Yep. And that's going to let us get this done in fewer rounds and with fewer buys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 rounds is how long this is going to take to go. All right. How many was it in the ordinary double elimination with 6 players? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 rounds. So we've saved a round. We've gone from 6 or 7 rounds to 5 or 6 rounds. And we've gone from 7 buys to 3 buys. I would argue that this would be a much better way to run a double elimination tournament with 6 players. Okay. This is a interesting version that I actually really like a lot. I think this is the best version that I have here for a double elimination with 6 players. The problem is the bracket notation does break down a little bit here on the end, but there's few enough teams remaining there that I think you'll find that it's easy enough to figure out. So what we have here is we've just simply divided it into 3 sections. So we have 2 teams in each of these. So again, everyone starts with these 3 games. And then in the second round, we're going to do winners against losers, just like we did on that alternative 4-player version. So it's kind of a rotation, right? And then the third round, we're going to rotate the winners from other groups on in. Now, this third round does have the possibility that some teams may be in 2 of these games. It's not possible for a team to qualify for 3 of these games, but some could qualify for 2 of these games. So this third round could in fact be 2 rounds. So we have 1, 2, 3, and possibly 4 rounds to here. And then here we have 5 and possibly 6. So it's the same 5 or 6 rounds that you saw before. Okay. Are there any possibilities of buys? Well, sort of. In this part here, you could have a situation where a team is in this, and then this team might have to wait, for example. So you could have a buy within this section here that's really 2 rounds. All right, now you have 3 potential winners coming out of this. So how do we deal with that? Well, these 3 potential winners may, in fact, have one team taking 2 of those slots, okay? So if that's the case, you only have 2 teams left, and it's very easy. One of those teams will have 0 losses, and one will have 1 loss. So they play each other, and then if nobody's if you still have 2 teams left, they both have 1 loss at that point, then they will play each other again. All right. If you actually have 3 teams come out of this, then obviously you're going to have a bye, and the bye should either go to the highest seed if you have seeds, or just be random if you don't have seeds. So again, I don't like buys, but when you have 3 teams left, there's nothing you can do to avoid it. So I believe there's no more than 2 buys possible in this format. So this is a format that I greatly like. Same number of rounds, as I said, on this, as you see on this format. The only downside I see to this one is that the notation at the end here is weird. Like I say, the bracket format breaks down at the end, but you're only going to have 2 or 3 teams left at that point, so it's pretty straightforward, right? If there's 2 teams, obviously, you just keep playing until everyone except one has lost twice. If there's 3 teams, well, someone gets a bye and then the others play. So that's that. Okay, here is my favorite of all. This is 8 teams, double elimination, but not in the standard format that we're used to. It's been adjusted. So, as I alluded to earlier, what we're going to do is, instead of insisting that the entire loser's bracket be done before the winner's bracket can come in, we're just going to start playing the winners against the losers as soon as it's necessary. And in doing so, we're actually going to have no buys. There's one slight caveat to that, which I'll explain. But here what we have our winner's bracket up here. Then from each round, you basically form a new single elimination tournament, right? So here we have everybody who lost in the first round. Here we have those who lost in the second round, and here we have the one team that lost in the third round. Once we get to that point and it's all even as far as numbers of rounds, 1, 2, 3 rounds, guess what? Now we have 4 teams left. So what we're going to do is just make a single elimination out of them. This team plays this team, and this team plays this team, right? And then they come together and play this. Now, the only difference there is that this team has no losses, so they need to be given their second chance if they happen to lose here. And that's where this comes in on this grand final. Again, game 15 here is an if necessary game. You certainly could have a situation where a team wins all of these games and advances all the way to here, and of course they would be here as well, so you'd have the same team on both sides of this, and therefore this game would be not necessary in that situation. The one caveat about the bye would be if a team loses this game, if this team here that wins this, if they lose here, then they're not going to be playing in this game. They're going to have to wait for the grand final. So there's one possible bye, depending on the way that this goes. It's not always going to happen. And it would be to a team that goes win, 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 loss, and then they get a bye before the grand final. I think this is about the best that you possibly can do. And so this is what I recommend for 8 players in double elimination. Everybody's basically playing every round until they're eliminated, with that one slight exception that I just talked about. So if you're running a something like a card game or a chess tournament or something like that, I recommend this. Why would I recommend this over Swiss, for example? Because you don't have to wait for the whole round to be done before you start the next one. If I win my game here, well, as soon as this game is done, we can start, even if some of these games are still going. You can't do that in Swiss. You might say, oh, well, the whole thing is still going to take the same amount of time. Well, that's only true if the same player is the slowest player in every single round, which could happen, certainly, but it can't be any slower than Swiss. Same thing if I lose this game. well, as soon as this game is done, then we can move on. So in fact, as soon as this game's ready to go, this game is also ready to go. So that helps to keep things moving along. So like I say, I think this is my favorite of all of them. If you got an 8-player tournament to run, I think this is definitely the way to go. Again, I'm talking about card games or something where you have plenty of table space. If you are constrained by, playing facilities, if you're playing basketball and you only have so many courts, then, keeping things compact like this may not be as big of a deal for you. Although I still think it's great to avoid buys and keep everybody playing. How many rounds is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 rounds. All right, just as we've seen with some of these others, it saves a round over the standard, which has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 rounds, right? This one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 rounds. So you've actually saved a round and saved buys and still having a true double elimination. I think it's great. Just for fun, I've got a few expansions of this out to 16 and 32 teams. You could do, of course, exactly the same thing with 16 teams, but the only problem with that is that you end up with a little bit of a weird situation at the end where instead of having a nice 4-player single elimination, now you have a 5-player, so you've got to figure out who's going to get the buys there. So instead of doing that, what I've done is basically made 2 8-player tournaments that work exactly the way that I just described, and then the winners of the winners bracket portion end up playing against each other here, with the winner of that getting to this grand final. All right, so this is 16 teams. 32 teams works pretty similarly. The winners bracket finalists, though, they all kind of come together right here and have that last final single elimination with the winner going to this. So again, basically we're looking at breaking it up into 8-man brackets and then having them, when those are done, then you start crossing over with the losers brackets. So the key insight on all of this is that you don't need to wait until the losers brackets are finished before you cross over and have winners against losers. You can do it beforehand. All of this, by the way, is true double elimination. I'm not doing anything where like you lose, but then you still have a shot at 3rd place, kind of like they do in wrestling tournaments. No, if you lose, you still have the shot to win the whole tournament. You just can't lose again. I prefer it that way. If you wanted to do it where you have a true consolation bracket where you don't have a chance at winning, but you have a chance at some kind of consolation, you could modify these for that. So that's my basic commentary. Let me know what you guys think. I think that there's great room for improvement in some of these bracket-based tournaments, and I think a little bit of thought and not necessarily doing it the way that it's always been done can really keep the tournaments moving along and keep people playing a little bit more often. And I think overall that'll lead to a more fun experience for everybody involved. All right, thanks a lot.